Reading 20 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 2, Berlin, May 20th, 1944. The meaning of evolution in the work. The doctrine of eyes is the most important part of the psychological teaching of this work. Unless a person begins to see that he is not one, he can never be otherwise than completely identified with himself. Just think what this means. I repeat that unless a person begins to see that he is not one, but many different eyes, he cannot be otherwise than completely identify with himself in everything that he does, and thinks and feels. Now, such a man cannot evolve. Being fixed to himself as he is, he cannot separate himself from himself. When you speak to a man like this, he is very surprised when he is told to observe himself, and he is quite incapable of understanding what it means. Now, all evolution in the work sense depends on a certain number of eyes moving into new positions and gradually gaining and increasing control over the remaining eyes. If a man were just one and the same eye, it would be impossible, of course, for this to happen. This new position into which these eyes, upon which a person's evolution depends, have to move, is towards a more central position in the person, and at the same time, if it is possible to explain it, they must have a special place. They cannot be on the same level as the other eyes. They must be given a certain rank, a certain distinction, or as the work puts it, a certain valuation. Otherwise, immediately a man gets immersed in the affairs of life, making money, etc. These eyes will all get scattered, and in a short time a man will not know what on earth this work is about, even if he caught some glimpse of it before. Of course, this depends on the kind of man he is. If a man has magnetic center, if he has always felt that there is more in things than appears on the surface, if he has noticed that certain kinds of teaching very similar in nature have always existed, which are quite different from those referring to the affairs of life, then it will be possible for him to understand what it means to keep certain eyes in him away from the street, from the level of the ordinary traffic. For a man who is purely material, to whom everything real is merely what he can see and touch, this will be impossible. And so, for the same reason, individual evolution will be impossible. For a long time we can observe the struggle going on in ourselves with regard to the above situation. Sometimes individual evolution is defined in the work as a new growth of essence. Taking essence simply as something more internal than personality, it means that essence is a growth of something internal, rather than external in personality. Personality surrounds essence, and so is external. As we know, personality, that is the acquired side of us, may so surround essence that a person becomes dead. He is completely cut off from essence. He may appear to be a very highly organized being, or have a strong personality and so on, and yet he is dead. Now, when a man is held by personality, there is no real man inside him. I would ask you to pay attention to what is going to be said. If a man is held by personality and by nothing deeper, he is not a man at all, and there can be no individual evolution of him. When, however, a man is held by something internal to personality, he begins to be a man and is capable of an individual evolution into a conscious being. We are, of course, mere outlines, experiments. We are experiments in the creation of a self-developing being. At the same time, we have to be able to live in ordinary life. For this reason, personality is acquired, which enables us to make contact with outer life and to do our work, and so on. But this is only an external development. You can talk, if you like, about the evolution of the personality, but this is not what the work means by individual evolution. Certainly, this is a preliminary step, and the richer the personality, the more material, the more inscribed roles in centers, the more experiences, the more knowledge, the better. But this does not make essence grow. Essence can only grow through the weakening of the personality. From the ordinary state of an adult person, where the personality is active and the essence is passive, a new state must be eventually reached in which the essence is active and the personality passive. You can understand that this is a very long journey, and you can also understand that you cannot understand it right away. But it is very useful to remember it very often, especially in moments of struggle. Now, for the essence, or inner, part of us to grow and become gradually active, a man must be able to be utterly sincere with himself when the occasion arises. Essence cannot grow from anything false. I said just now that as long as a man was held by the personality, he was not really a man, nor could he evolve individually. When a man is held only by the personality, everything he does is insincere, relatively speaking. It is pseudo. For instance, he gives something to the poor because he wishes to appear charitable, or he may do it in secret, and yet in a false way, in order to keep a picture of himself alive, or in order to be found out later. Let us take a man who keeps the law only from the external side of himself. He will be afraid of loss of reputation, of being arrested, and so on. He will not do many things which he would do at once if these external restraints were removed. So you see that he is not really a man. Now, when a person is in this state, and a great many people are, they are really governed by fear of consequences. They will pretend and ever pretend to themselves that they would not steal, for example, but as soon as they feel they can do so without being discovered, they will proceed to steal in all the thousands of ways that it is possible to do so nowadays. And if all external restraints were removed, law, police, government, social opinion, etc., they would simply do exactly what they wanted. Now, when a man is bound by no inner restraints, if he has any conception of God, it will be of a God of fear and violence. It is quite possible to see what is meant here. To a man bound by nothing internal, God is fear and violence. Now, when the internal or essential part of a man begins to develop, his conception of God, however vague it may be, changes. It changes from the negative sign of fear and violence to the positive sign of affection or interest or valuation. The internal, essential part of a man cannot grow through fear because when a man does a thing because he is afraid of the consequences, if he does not do it, he is doing it under the compulsion of fear. The case will be quite different when he does a thing for himself, from himself. Now, what does it mean to be bound by something internal? In the first place, it means that such a person will always maintain a certain integrity quite apart from outer circumstances. He will have a center of gravity in himself. He will not completely alter his conduct when external circumstances change or when there are no legal restraints or fear of police, and so on. When a man has seen the truth of something for himself and feels it emotionally, it is no longer a question of the external personality, but of a deeper, inner side of evolving. Many people take their impression of life from what happens in life. Such people lose their hope or become cynical very easily. The work teaches that everything simply happens in life, and that life is a big factory used for cosmic reasons. Now, when a person begins to see that there is something else, and begins to see for himself the meaning of it, he begins to grow internally. A person may not manifest negative emotions because of external reasons. Socially, we are taught not to express negative emotions, at least in public. But once the external restraint is removed, once the fear of social criticism is temporarily absent, a man or woman will express his or her negative emotions to the full. But if we have ever thought and seen deeply enough, we will realize what the work teaches about negative emotions. We will realize the truth of this knowledge we have been taught and realize it for ourselves. It is then possible to begin to work in a quite different way. The more essential part of a person will then begin to grow. Let us look briefly at the idea of evolution as taught by the work and compare it with the modern idea of evolution. This work, just as science, teaches that evolution exists. The difference is that the work says that mechanical evolution does not exist, save within already created types. In the case of some particular species of animals, those who are hardier will naturally or mechanically be selected, and so tend to survive rather than their more weakly brethren. Also, the work says that a particular species of animal, such as the horse, can be bred by selection by man, and so be improved. But it teaches there is no gradual mechanical turning of one species into another. A monkey does not little by little turn into a man, any more than a sow's ear gradually, little by little, turns into a silk purse. This earth, so low down in the scheme of creation, is subject to many influences apart from those already known, such as solar radiations or cosmic radiations. All living things on this earth, in the thin film of organic life covering its surface, were created by that level that corresponds to the sun, physically in the ray of creation, at that point in the octave of the ray between Fa and Mi, where a shock is necessary in order to transmit influences to the moon. But in creating this sensitive film, this pain factory, the primary object of the sun was to create a self-developing being. First of all sorts of experiments were necessary, all sorts of plans. For this reason, the work speaks of the solar laboratory. Finally, after many experiments, man himself was created as a being capable of an inner evolution. For this reason, in esoteric psychology, man is called a seed. As a machine, he springs from a seed in the womb. All this is given to him. This is his first evolution, the result of millions of experiments. But he is capable of a further evolution, an individual evolution, through his own understanding and efforts. In every age, every epoch, every period of history, there is sown into the world esoteric teaching, which gives the outlines of his further self-development. Man is born with a great part of his brain unused, a fact which no mechanical theory of evolution by selection and immediate advantage can explain. These unused parts of the brain represent his further possibilities of individual evolution. What is he going to build up in these unused parts? What ideas? In our epoch, we have had given the esoteric teaching in the Gospels, indicating the direction in which individual evolution should take place at this stage. However, these teachings have been perverted and turned into something almost useless. Yet it is obvious that if people really were Christian in the sense that Christ taught, all wars and many other evils would cease. But what Christ taught and what Christianity teaches are two quite different things.